In order to have a shelf that spans the width of the van and runs about 5 feet in depth, you've got to have strong bracing. And these are super stout braces that will match the contour of the van wall sides and contain L-track, so that when two of them are operating on one side as a pair, you can support a cross brace that will allow a platform that supports 600 pounds. We're going to do the bracing today. It shouldn't be too difficult, but it will involve removing the factory panels, drilling into the side of the van, installing riv nuts, and then installing these braces. But once we're done, we will have the basis for putting in a really cool 600-pound capacity shelf on which we can store other equipment and other aircraft. Let's get to it. In order to have the shelf run across, we need these wall braces, and these are contoured as we saw initially, and I've temporarily bolted them into the frame and then drilled out the other holes with a 3/16 drill. And now what I'm going to do is use the riveter and actually rivet in the open holes. Then I'll remove the temporary screws and rivet those, and we'll be solid. Now we're using a manual riveter, so it's more fun, not than a pneumatic one, but it works. Now we've got the first brace in on the passenger side, and nothing's moving that. And we still see some insulation left over. I had to pull the panels off in order to put this on. And the other side is clean. Now we'll go for the remaining brackets on either side, and that'll be it. All right, so now we've got the rib nuts installed on this side. We can add the corresponding front bracket, which is right here. And getting these rib nuts in perfectly is a step-by-step process. You can't really just mark the holes and drill them, because you're dealing with very rigid aluminum and the holes need to be aligned perfectly. So what you do is you temporarily sheet metal screw two of the holes, and then using a step bit in the two remaining open holes in the aluminum bar, you will drill a dead center hole as far as the opening will go in the aluminum, then pull the bracket off, drill it wide enough for the riv nut, put the riv nuts in, reassemble the bar, and then do the same thing over again. It seems like it's redundant, but what you get are perfectly aligned holes. Let's see how they work. All right, I've got one of the bolts in, and it's loose, right? Because we want to keep them all loose. But look at the alignment here. It's right in there on the center. And as we go down, here's another loosely fit bolt. And then this hole is aligned. So that's what we're going for. Let's attach the bracket. Only an RC guy would do this. I'm taking a hand wrench, and I just want to feel how tight each one is instead of allowing the bit in the drill to mechanically do this. This gives me a sense of how cranked down each one of these bolts is. And I don't want them too crazy tight. They don't need to be. Well, they need to be secure, but I don't want to rotate that rib nut in there. Now this one needs a little bit more help. So we'll give it a few turns, and I can feel the friction here. And I think I'm rotating the rib nut. Nope, I'm not. So this is grabbing nicely. I just didn't get it in tight enough. So now we've got it, and the entire thing is ready to go. It matches with the other one, and all we do next is remount the plastic piece that came on there, and that is not simple because I have to cut it so that it fits in between the two vertical rails. That is a large Pain in the butt, but it must be done. Well, it's been a long Sunday. Started at 8 a.m., took a lunch break, went to Home Depot for a step bit, but other than that, been working on the installation of the bracing kit that is necessary in order to put our shelf across the van. We're just going to place some brackets on the L-track, and then the shelf, or bed as it's used normally, comes in 3 sections. And each of those sections can compress so that when you load it onto the bracket, it expands and it stays into place. Having to insulate, having to remove these panels, cut the panels so that the L-track fits in nicely, put the wool back in, put the panels back in, and get everything right. Again, it's not that difficult, it's just tedious. But in the end, the results are worth it, and it looks cool, and it'll be super functional. It's time to install the upper deck in the van. And I've been calling it a shelf, but really, to do it justice, I'm going to call it an upper deck, because that's what it is. And this upper deck consists of 3 panels. 2 of them are exactly this size. These are 24 inches deep, and they span the width of the van. And one of them is a little bit deeper because it fits the contour of the back of the van. What you'll notice are these fingers in the shelf, and underneath is a piston. It puts 15 pounds of pressure on this shelf, which expands it outwards. Well, what I'm going to do is compress it inward, lift it up, put it on the 2 racks in between the 2 rails, and let it expand. And it will lock into the notches in each rail. It's an ingenious system. It supports 600 pounds of weight. It's normally used for camping. You would sleep on this thing, but we're going to use it for much more important purposes, and that's to haul RC stuff. When we install the rails for the upper deck, we'll install them on these ingenious little buggers that sandwich themselves in the channels of the L-track here. Super easy install, 2 bolts, and we're done. So when we hang this, we gotta mash this against the L-track to make sure those little holders don't come out of place. And then I'll simply attach these bolts. These are 9/16, so they're big boys. And just tighten her up. That is not going anywhere. Make sure not to cross thread this guy. Pretty tight thread count here on these bolts, which is nice. I always prefer a more precise bolt than a coarse one. Okay, solid as a rock, and I got my tie down anchor points here, and we'll put some of this L-track in the middle of those expandable shelf units, and that will give me loop and then loop to the other side. All right, we're going to put the shelves in. We'll start with the rear shelf. That is the largest one over here, and it's a little bit heavy, so I'll just grab it over here, and then I have to compress it. So if you've been doing your fly exercises at the gym, it's not going to be a big problem. Okay, so now I got this thing, and all I have to do is go to one side and kind of press it in, and there it's in, and then allow the other side to come out, and you kind of have to wiggle it a little bit, but when it catches, it will lock into place, and it looks like it already caught. Yeah, I am already in. And then there's a couple of locks down here, which I will just click into place, and it's not going anywhere. Now it's time for shelf number 2. And if you guys are wondering how I'm standing up on the deck unit in the van, I'm short as hell. That's the only answer I have. Now I'm going to stagger the little fingers. I got the fingers on this side for the back shelf, which we just put in. And now I'm going to put in this second shelf and have the fingers on the opposite side. You know, it's really for strength, but we're not going to even tax the limits of this thing. So I'm going to compress it and rotate it around. Bring it up. Lock it in and let it slide. Let it slide. Now I'll lock it in on the bottom. I'll flick the little tabs here, and these will come down. And now, safe and secure. I got one more to go if I want a full-length shelf, but there is an advantage to stopping here and only putting in 2 panels, and that is I can stand on the decked unit and pretty much reach anything that's up here. If I put the third one in, it's kind of hard to get to stuff that's in the way back. You can go and try to access it from the back. If you've got something really huge, you put in the third shelf, you transport it, and you deal with it. Otherwise, on a daily basis, these things are pretty easy to put in, especially the small ones. You could just leave it out. That's the beauty of this Moab bed from Adventure Wagon. And you can check those guys out at adventurewagon.com. Good bunch of guys and a really, really good product. Now that the van is finished, it's time to put stuff in it and use it. In our next episode, we'll load up the van and we'll take out airplanes and helicopters and just see how the van gets used in ordinary flying day situations. Now, it's winter here in Denver, so the flying days are a little bit fewer and farther between, and I'm now in a temporary workshop location because we're moving to a new house, and so it may be a couple of days before we see that follow-up final episode. But I promise you, it'll be worth it. That way, you could see the entire van come together as it was intended. Thanks for watching.